What is going on, y'all? This is John with Facemask Fantasy, and today we're digging into a subject that's been on my mind a lot lately. With the draft coming up next month, I've got these incoming wide receivers on the mind, and none more so than Treylon Burks. Coming into 2022, Treylon was thought of as the wide receiver 1 in this class by literally everyone, and it wasn't even that close between him and whoever they had at their wide receiver 2 spot. Treylon was the guy, and he's long been heralded as the next DK Metcalf, the next big-bodied alpha wide receiver prospect who was thought of as a guy who would post elite measurables at the combine and have a good shot to be a first-round pick, if not an early first-round pick. Now here's a little history on Treylon Burks. He was a 3-sport athlete in high school and was the highest rated recruit in the state of Arkansas. He chose to become a Razorback, where he produced as a freshman on the ground and through the air, and continuously improved every year he played against the best of the best SEC competition. Now enter the combine. He was supposed to run in the low 4.4s or the high 4.3s like DK after being clocked at 22.6 miles per hour during a 91-yard touchdown catch and run that he had while again playing against as close to NFL level talents as can be found in college football, as he played again in the SEC. Instead, he ran a lackluster 4.55 and tested poorly in the short area quickness drills, which led many to question whether or not he should be the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this draft class, especially since we've seen highly touted NFL wide receivers with his frame and general scouting profile flame out early in their NFL careers. Laquan Treadwell, Cordarrelle Patterson, Michael Floyd, Kelvin Benjamin, and most recently, N'Keal Harry. Now those worries aren't without merit, and I had to do a little double take myself, and ultimately it led to this video being made, because as a dynasty player with multiple early first-round picks in a few leagues, Treylon Burks was somebody I was expecting to miss out on completely, as I do not own the 101 in any of the leagues that I'm playing in. But now it looks like he may be available around the 103-104 spot after his subpar combine outing, and as such, I needed to find out for myself whether or not he projects to be the next wide receiver to flame out, or the next wide receiver to be a perennial All-Pro candidate for years to come. He was measured at the combine at 6'2", 225 pounds, and for all of his bad press of late, he posted an 87th percentile speed score. While his burst and short area quickness is something we should at least question, he's not going to be juking people out of their socks at the next level. That's not how he succeeded in college, and that's not how he will succeed in the NFL. It's just not part of his game, and that's okay, as he projects to be an outside wide receiver who wins with straight line speed. He projects as an every down red zone threat, and after the catch, he is a very tough player to bring down. So I'm not too worried about his shortcomings in the short area quickness metrics. As far as his 40 time, I know everyone wanted to see him run a 4.3, me included, and instead he ran a 4.55. But at his size, and with what he brings to the table, that shouldn't be much of a detractor to his overall value. And for what it's worth, we hear people talk about game speed versus drill speed all the time, and having been clocked at 22.6 miles per hour in college against SEC competition, I think he's got more than enough game speed, and it may not have translated completely to the combine, but don't let that fool you. Dude is plenty fast. And even if he is just an outside wide receiver with 4.55 speed, that's not a death knell to his value. Plenty of perennial all-pro talents have run in the 4.5s and seen multiple years of top-end production. Jordy Nelson at 6'3", 217 ran a 4.51, and in the pros he was constantly getting behind defenses for long scores in his heyday in Green Bay. Larry Fitzgerald at 6'3", 217 ran a 4.53 and is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and no one has ever worried about his speed and how it translated to NFL production. He was a beast. Des Bryant at 6'2", 220 pounds ran a 4.52 at his pro day, and in his prime was one of the best alpha wide receivers in the game. Allen Robinson, 6'2", 220, ran a pro day adjusted 4.56 and was the wide receiver 12 overall twice in Chicago with terrible QB play and coaching, having to deal with Matt Nagy and the combination of Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles throughout his tenure in Chicago, and that's leaving out his years in Jacksonville, where he also finished as a high-end wide receiver multiple years. Brandon Marshall ran a 4.52 at 6'4", and while he's taller than Treylon, he was never somebody anyone looked at and said he's too slow to be an alpha wide receiver. He was a wide receiver 1 multiple times in his career. Alshon Jeffrey, 6'3", 216, ran a 4.53. He was a top 10 wide receiver in points per game 2 times and was a top 12 wide receiver 3 times throughout his career. Marquise Colston, 6'5", 225, ran a 4.5, and was one of the first big slot wide receivers to post huge numbers early on in Drew Brees' career. He was a wide receiver 1 multiple times throughout his career. Eric Decker, at 6'3", 215, at 6'5", 215, ran a 4.6 at the combine, and had 3 years of top 12 wide receiver production on multiple different teams with consensus subpar QB play. Mike Evans, though 2 inches taller than Treylon at 6'5", ran a 4.53 and has the longest streak of consecutive 1,000-yard seasons ever. No one's worried about Mike Evans' ability to get behind defenses and post up monster games on a weekly basis. And I know everyone loves to hate on Kenny Golladay, but at 6'4", he ran a 4.5 flat and was a top 10 wide receiver multiple times in his career on the Lions. So yes, Treylon Burks can technically flame out in the NFL like the Laquan Treadwells and the Michael Floyds and the Kelvin Benjamins and the Corey Colemans and most recently the N'Keal Harrys of the world. But we shouldn't be projecting that for him based solely on him not reaching our very lofty combine expectations. I think at his floor, Treylon is a better wide receiver than all those guys listed. I think at his floor, he'd be a Dwayne Bowe level talent who suffered from subpar QB play while playing with Alex Smith on the Chiefs, who famously didn't throw a touchdown to any of his wide receivers for a 2-year period before being shipped off. And Dwayne Bowe was a top 18 wide receiver 3 times in his first 5 years in the league, again, with Alex Smith. So I still have Treylon as my wide receiver 1. He was the consensus wide receiver 1 in this class for at least a year, if not years. And Michael Floyd was never anyone's wide receiver 1 in 2012. That was Justin Blackmon, who flamed out for his off-the-field issues and not for his on-the-field production. Kelvin Benjamin was not anyone's wide receiver 1 overall in 2014. That was Sammy Watkins, who flamed out due to the then Bills head coach Rex Ryan forcing him to play through a Jones fracture late in the year, turning an elite receiver prospect into a shell of himself for the rest of his career. And everyone had Mike Evans, Odell, and Brandon Cooks over Kelvin Benjamin in that class as well. So in my opinion, he doesn't compare to the consensus wide receiver 1 in this class, Treylon Burks. Some may have had Kevin White as their wide receiver 1 in 2015, but to his credit or detriment, his career was derailed by injuries sustained in 3 consecutive years in 2015, 2016, and 2017. And we're not projecting 3 consecutive years of season-ending lower body injuries for Treylon. And even then, most had Amari Cooper as their wide receiver 1 in 2015, so I don't view Kevin White as really comparable. In 2016, no one was projected to be the next great alpha wide receiver. This class included Corey Coleman, Will Fuller, Josh Doctson, and Laquan Treadwell in the first round. Wide receivers were not a strength of this 2016 class, and most knew it, whereas the general consensus about the 2022 class is that this is a wide receiver heavy draft. And thus, I don't think it's fair to compare Treylon Burks, who has been, again, the consensus wide receiver 1 for at least a full calendar year in a wide receiver heavy draft, to anybody in 2016. In 2017, we had Corey Davis and Mike Williams at the top of the first. While both haven't reached their full potentials as of yet, Williams looks to be a late bloomer playing with Herbert and finished as the wide receiver 12 overall last year, and Davis has suffered from playing with Mariota and Zach Wilson thus far. And in his 1 season with a top 10 quarterback in Tannehill, he was a wide receiver 2 for much of the season. And in 2019, N'Keal Harry was once again not a consensus wide receiver 1 throughout the pre-draft process. He was expected to be good, but Marquise Brown was drafted ahead of him for a reason. He does compare to Treylon in the size-speed category, based on his combine measurables, but Harry has never been clocked at 22.6 miles per hour in his whole life, and he's been known to have lapses in concentration while on the field and off the field, which led to him barely being utilized by the team that drafted him. And I'm not projecting that outcome for Treylon either. Treylon Burks is still my consensus wide receiver 1 in the 2022 rookie draft out of all wide receivers, even though the gap between him and the Garrett Wilsons, Chris Olaves, and Drake Londons has closed considerably in recent weeks. He's still my wide receiver 1, and I don't think he's the next N'Keal Harry. Treylon did what he did in college against the SEC, so the competition they were going up against is not comparable. I said it multiple times already, and I'll say it again. Treylon has been almost everyone's consensus wide receiver 1 dating back to a whole calendar year. Treylon has game speed on his side, having been clocked at 22.6 miles per hour. He's more Alshon Jeffrey than he is N'Keal Harry, and that Alshon comp might be selling him short if I'm being completely honest. So don't shy away from Treylon early in your rookie drafts based solely on what he did in the combine. He's still that dude for me, and I believe he should be be for you as well. But what do you guys think about Treylon Burks? Do you think he's going to flame out like in N'Keal Harry? Or do you think he has multiple top 10 wide receiver finishes in his outcomes in the NFL? Put your thoughts in the comment section below, or better yet, tune into one of our weekly live streams that we hold on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. EST. Drop a comment in the chat and we can have a conversation about Treylon Burks or anybody else in this rookie class, or anybody else in fantasy football in real time. But thank you for listening. My name is John. This is Facemask Fantasy, and we hope that you guys have a great rest of your day.